You walk into any Walmart, any Dollar General, any gas station convenience store in America, and if you know what you are looking for, you start seeing the same pattern over and over again. Not bad people, not lazy people, not stupid people, people working hard, getting older, feeling squeezed, trying to keep life moving, and quietly buying the exact things that are making escape harder every month. That is what I want to talk about. Not an occasional splurge, not the harmless little pleasures of life. I am talking about 7 specific purchases that keep showing up in the lives of people who can least afford them. And the reason I care so much is that these purchases do not merely waste money. They shape destiny. That sounds dramatic. Good money is dramatic when repeated long enough. A bad purchase once is just a mistake. A bad purchase repeated for 10 years becomes a lifestyle. A lifestyle repeated for 30 years becomes a retirement. And a retirement built on the wrong habits becomes a sentence. I have spent my whole life around capital, around businesses, around compounding, around the quiet arithmetic of how some people slowly escape pressure while others stay in the same financial spot year after year and call it bad luck. It is often not bad luck. It is pattern. That is the cold truth. And the pattern is so ordinary that people stop respecting it. A car in the driveway, scratch, offs in the pocket. A sofa bought on easy monthly payments. A protection plan slipped onto a receipt. 5 streaming subscriptions no one really watches carefully enough to justify. Lunch out every day because the day felt hard. The modern world is extremely good at helping you spend tomorrow's freedom in very small, emotionally convenient pieces. That is what makes it so deadly. No one announces, you are now making the kinds of choices that will keep you financially fragile for 20 years. They hand you a monthly payment. They hand you a little burst of hope. They hand you the soothing phrase, you deserve it. Then they let time do the killing. I learned something very early. The difference between poor thinking and wealthy thinking is rarely the amount of money in your pocket right now. It is what you believe a dollar is supposed to do. Poor thinking says, I have money today, so I can spend it today. Wealthy thinking says, I have money today, so I can make it work for me tomorrow. That one difference changes everything. It changes the car you buy, the entertainment you keep, the debt you tolerate, the things you insure, the food you casually overpay for, the fantasies you fund, and because it changes all those things, it changes the shape of the life. So let me show you the 7 purchases that are hurting people most. Not to shame anybody, to break the spell. Because once you see the trap clearly, it becomes much easier to stop walking into it. The first one is brand new cars. This is the single biggest wealth killer I have seen in lower and middle income America for decades. A person finally gets a decent job. Maybe he makes $40,000 or $50,000 a year. Maybe a little more. Maybe he feels for the first time that life is beginning to open. And what does he do? He walks into a dealership and signs for a $35,000 car with a 6-year or 7-year loan at a rate ugly enough to hurt and not ugly enough to scare him away. It feels grown up. It feels like proof. It feels like a rival. And that is exactly why it is so dangerous. A new car loses a huge percentage of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. Not over 10 years, not after some dramatic accident. Immediately, you buy something for $35,000 and it is worth materially less before you even make the first real payment. Then it keeps falling. Another 40 or 50% over the next several years is not unusual. So now you have a declining asset financed by expensive money. That is not a wealth move. That is a status move. And status moves are usually the most expensive moves in personal finance. The person making $600 a month in car payments thinks he bought transportation. What he often really bought was a monthly reminder that his income must keep performing at a certain level just to preserve the signal. That is the part most people never say aloud. The car is not only a purchase, it is a future obligation disguised as pride. Now compare that with a 2-year, old or 3-year, old Honda Accord or Toyota Camry. Someone else took the first brutal depreciation hit. The car still has most of its useful life ahead of it. The reliability is proven. The maintenance profile is understood. And you may have saved $10,000 or $15,000 in one choice. That is not a small number. That is capital. If you invest that difference over a long period, it becomes a very large number. People laugh at that comparison because they want the new car smell more than they want the math. The market does not care what smell you liked. It only cares what capital you preserved. I have never confused transportation with identity. A car is there to get you where you need to go. Comfort matters. Safety matters, reliability matters, but newness, for most people, is one of the costliest vanity upgrades in the whole consumer economy. You are trading, compounding for upholstery. That is the truth. Now the second purchase, lottery tickets and scratch-offs. I have said before that the lottery is a tax on people who cannot do arithmetic, and every year I see more proof that the line survives because it is accurate. This one hurts me because it feeds on the exact emotional state that makes clear thinking hardest. A person is tired tight, discouraged, the future looks blocked. A $5 dream feels cheap. That is what makes the lottery industry so effective. It does not sell probability. It sells relief. It sells the fantasy that one moment can undo 10 years of pressure. That is a very seductive product to someone whose real life feels cramped and repetitive. I understand that. Understanding it emotionally does not make it financially less destructive. The odds are grotesque. The average return is terrible. The little wins only keep the machine alive by making the losing feel interactive. And yet households earning the least often spend a meaningful percentage of income feeding that machine. Imagine what that money becomes if redirected. $100 a month, $125 a month. Over decades in a Roth IRA or a low-cost index fund, that becomes real money. Not fantasy wealth, real wealth. The kind that actually changes old age. The kind that turns panic years into manageable years. The kind that keeps your children from having to rescue you. This is why I call the lottery one of the cruelest financial products in America. Not because it tricks the rich, because it harvests hope from people whose hope needed to be turned into discipline. Instead, the lottery teaches the exact opposite of what wealth requires. It teaches waiting for luck. Wealth is built by systems, by small repeated actions, by letting reality look boring long enough that compounding can finally become visible. There is no emotional fireworks show in a monthly automatic investment. That is why it works. It cannot flatter you on the way in, so it only pays you later. The lottery flatters you immediately and impoverishes you over time. That is the entire difference. Now the third purchase, payday loans and cash advances. These are not financial products in any honorable sense. They are extraction systems, predatory systems. They are designed for one kind of person. The person who is already cornered. That is what should tell you everything. A healthy financial product does not need desperation to survive. A payday lender does. The terms are absurd if stated honestly. You need $500 now. You pay an outrageous fee for a tiny short-term bridge. That fee annualized becomes something so violent that if most people saw it described as a percentage first, they would think the offer was a joke. But desperation changes the mind. Urgency changes the mind. A person says, "I will deal with it next check." Then next check comes and there is still not enough room. So the loan rolls, then it rolls again. Now you are not solving the emergency. You are funding the lender's business model with your instability. That is what I mean when I say some financial products are built not to help the poor escape, but to keep the poor recyclable. This is one of them. People ask, what should I do instead if the rent is due or the car broke or the utility notice came? I will tell you exactly what I would do before touching a payday lender. Call the landlord, call the utility company, ask for an extension, ask for a payment plan, ask family if you can, ask your employer if an advance is possible. Sell something, do something uncomfortable that preserves your long-term life, because payday debt does not solve urgency. It rents urgency from tomorrow at a rate that poisons every paycheck after this one. And once you are inside that cycle, you are no longer planning, you are triaging. That is why the long-term answer matters so much. Build the emergency fund before life humiliates you, even if it starts at $25 a week, even if it feels too small to matter. Small reserves change behavior. Behavior changes options. Options change outcomes. The person with even a modest emergency buffer is living in a different world from the person who must buy every crisis on credit. That is how wealth starts for many people. Not through investing first, through making sure the next emergency does not force them into usurious debt. Now the fourth purchase, rent. Own furniture and electronics. This is one of the slickest traps in the consumer economy because it hides the insult inside affordability. A sofa for $69 a month. A television for $39 a month. A bedroom set that fits your budget. It all sounds manageable. That is the trick. The monthly number is meant to hypnotize you. The total number is where the crime sits. Stretch those payments long enough and you end up paying multiples of what the thing was worth. Thousands for a couch that should have cost a fraction of that. 4 times retail for appliances that will age before you finish paying for them. This is not financing. It is poverty tax. A store saying because you have less access to cheap capital, we will charge you far more for the same object. That is what is happening. And people fall for it because the home matters, because dignity matters, because nobody likes living in an empty place or bringing people into a room that feels unfinished. I understand all of that, but if your financial life is, your job is not to make the apartment look wealthy. Your job is to stop being financially vulnerable. Those are different goals. Used furniture is not glamorous. Facebook Marketplace is not glamorous. Estate sales are not glamorous. Thrift stores are not glamorous. Good, that is exactly why they are often rich. Person behavior in disguise. The rich do not become rich by paying 4 times retail for things whose only serious value was visual comfort. They buy patiently or they buy later. And later is one of the most underused words in all of personal finance. People think later means deprivation. Often it means strength. Now the 5th purchase, extended warranties and insurance on small items. This is one of the sneakiest leaks in the whole consumer system because it sounds prudent. You buy the laptop. Someone asks if you want the protection plan. You buy the phone. Someone asks if you want the insurance. You buy headphones, a tablet, a small appliance, and at the point of sale, a little voice offers a little extra product designed to calm your fear. Most of the time, what you are buying is overlapping, low probability coverage on an item whose loss would not actually devastate you. And that is the real rule of insurance. Insure what would damage you badly if lost. Your health, your life, if others depend on your income, your home, your car, if you need it and cannot replace it. Not every little object in the modern shopping basket. If your toaster breaks, you should not need an insurance policy. You should need a small savings buffer. If your phone fails, your life should not be set up in such a way that one deductible, one replacement cost, or one broken screen throws the whole machine into panic. That is why I prefer insuring the small things. Keep the premium yourself. Let that money build into a repair and replacement fund. If nothing breaks, you still have the money. If something does break, you handle it. That is a more adult system. Extended warranties exist because statistically they win for the seller, not for you. The seller has the data. The seller knows the failure rates. The seller knows the margin. The seller knows you are thinking in fear while he is thinking in probabilities. That asymmetry is the whole business. Now the 6th purchase, premium cable and endless streaming packages. Entertainment is one of the places where people quietly bleed wealth because the amount feels small enough to defend and the repetition feels harmless enough to ignore. $200 a month here, another service there, sports package, movie package, 5 subscriptions. Because every platform hides one show behind another wall. A big internet and television bundle because it felt normal to keep it. None of it feels like a life-changing mistake. That is because you are looking at the wrong frame. Monthly entertainment bloat is not mainly about this month. It is about what renewed passivity costs. $200 a month is $2,400 a year. Invested over a long period, that becomes a serious amount of money, and what are most households really getting in return? Not art, not peace, not one carefully chosen source of pleasure. They are getting redundancy. Digital clutter, half-used access, the emotional habit of always being entertained and never noticing how expensive the background noise has become. I am not anti-entertainment. I am anti-unconscious spending. 1 or 2 services chosen intentionally is different from 6 or 7 services accumulated lazily. A rotating system is intelligent. 3 months here, cancel. 3 months there, cancel. You do not need all of culture delivered at once for your household to remain humane. What you need is enough rest and enough pleasure that life remains tolerable, while money is still being directed toward freedom. That is a different standard. And then the 7th purchase, fast food, convenience store spending, and all the little daily purchases people treat as too small to matter. This is the one that does the most damage precisely because it is the easiest to wave away. A coffee, a drink, a lunch, a snack, a quick stop at the gas station, a breakfast sandwich because the morning felt rushed, a takeout dinner because the day felt hard. None of these things looks like financial failure. That is why they are so effective. They do not announce themselves as sabotage. They arrive as comfort, as convenience, as the little mercy people give themselves when life feels crowded. And yet if you total them honestly over a month, then a year, then 10 years, the amount becomes embarrassing. That is the hidden power of recurring consumer leakage. It is too small to provoke fear and too constant to stop on its own. Buying lunch out every day is not only a food choice, it is a recurring withdrawal from future capital. Buying every drink at the convenience store is not only about thirst, it is an agreement to pay a massive premium for the privilege of not planning. And planning is really what separates the two kinds of lives here. The person who packs lunch is not only saving money, he is proving he can make one part of life obey a longer horizon. The person making coffee at home is not only skipping a purchase, she is proving she can trade a tiny present pleasure for a larger future result without drama. That skill compounds. That is why discipline matters so much more than brilliance. The people who win with money are often not the highest earners. They are the ones least willing to let tiny daily comforts become permanent leaks in the boat. Now let me tell you what all 7 of these purchases have in common. They are all short-term emotional relief. That is the common denominator. A new car relieves the insecurity of not looking successful. The lottery relieves the pain of feeling trapped. The payday loan relieves immediate panic. The rent-to-own sofa relieves the shame of an unfinished room. The warranty relieves the fear of an inconvenient future expense. The streaming bundle relieves boredom. The fast food run relieves the stress of planning. All of them say the same thing: feel better now, pay later. And that is exactly how poverty perpetuates itself in a rich consumer society. Not only through low wages or bad luck or policy failure, through 1,000 invitations to spend the future in exchange for temporary emotional ease. That is why wealthy thinking is always longer-term thinking. Wealthy thinking says, what is this costing me in the future? That new car is not only $35,000. It may be $250,000 in lost compounding over time. That's daily always not at $5. It is years of small transfers away from future control. That cable package is not convenience. It is quietly traded optionality. Once you start seeing purchases that way, your whole relationship with money changes. You stop asking, can I afford this today? And start asking, what future am I giving up to have this now? That is a much better question. So here is what I want you to do, not next year. This week, pull your bank statements for the last 3 months. Not your memory, the statements. Find these 7 categories if they exist. Calculate what you are actually spending, not what you think you are spending, what the record says, then choose one, just one, not the hardest one. The easiest one you can kill first. Lottery tickets, 1 streaming package, fast food lunches 3 days a week, the convenience store stops, the warranty upsells, 1 category, cut it. Then automate the savings. The day after you get paid, move that amount into a Roth IRA, if you qualify, or a traditional IRA or a regular brokerage account if that is the right container for your situation. The point is not the perfection of the account. The point is the transfer of habit. Take the money out of the spending stream and turn it into an asset stream. That is where wealth begins. After 3 months, cut another one, then another. You do not have to become a monk. You do have to become someone who stops funding the exact purchases that keep him weak. That is the whole assignment. And if you do it long enough, something remarkable happens. The pressure starts to ease. Not because you suddenly got lucky, because the machine of your life stopped leaking so much of what you earn. People love to say the gap between poor and rich is enormous. Sometimes it is, structurally, politically, historically, yes, but on the behavioral level, the gap is often smaller and more daily than people want to admit. It is often built out of repeated little decisions. The right car, no lottery, no predatory debt, no 4 times, retail couch, no insurance on nonsense, less convenience eating, and more assets, more compounding, more patience. That is the game. It is not glamorous, it is effective. And effectiveness repeated for decades becomes the thing people later call financial wisdom. So do not tell me you need a new trick. You need a new standard. Every dollar that enters your hands is making you one of 2 things, more fragile or more free. That is the real choice. Make it consciously.